The occupying entity launches its most deadliest and powerful attack against the people of Lebanon, injuring and unaliving hundreds of people. How has this conflict spread to Lebanon? What do the Zionists seek to achieve? And is there an end in sight? Firstly, the Zionist entity wants an escalation. It has been poking and prodding Iran and Iranian proxies for weeks and weeks on end. You see, the Zionist entity sees that there is an opportunity in this entire conflict. It realizes now that it has an opportunity to weaken Iran and to weaken Iranian proxies. It knows that if it can reel in and bait Iran or Hezbollah to a direct conflict with itself, it knows the US will come running supporting it. Even though Iran and the US do not want escalation, but Israel dragging them into this conflict would almost force the US hand to support it. Because the Zionist entity is the little baby poodle of the US, and the US are not going to allow its baby poodle to be trampled on by Iran. And therefore Israel sees this as a prime time to weaken its enemies and to weaken Iranian influence within the region. Number two, this is a distraction from Gaza. The Zionist entity continues to commit crimes in Gaza. Every single day we are hearing reports of the numbers being unalived increasing with no end in sight. A new war front opening at the north of Israel on its border with Lebanon would mean a massive distraction and taking away the eyes of the world against the very conflict that has brought it under so much international pressure and negative public opinion, which is what it has been doing in Gaza since last year. Finally, there is an agenda that the Zionist entity is trying to push that is trying to change facts on the ground. The US is still adamant that it wants a two-state solution which sees Israel with most of the land and then the West Bank and Gaza as part of some kind of Palestinian state. The Zionist entity does not want this. It's already taken over half of Gaza. It already controls via settlements 80% of the West Bank. It is in a position right now where if it were to ask the Arab nations, the Arab leaders to recognize the 1967 borders, they would accept it within the blink of an eye. So then why settle for less? If you know that you've got the 1967 borders in the bag, you've already got 80% of West Bank, you've already got half of Gaza, why not go for more? Why not expand? If it occupies southern Lebanon, as well as Gaza and the West Bank, it now has a case that it can put in front of the US to say, look, there can be no such thing as a two-state solution, and there can be no such thing as Israel receding from these areas because we populated them with our own people. Changing the facts on the ground would make it a lot more difficult for the US to implement its idea of a two-state solution. And so where do you go from here? You have a rogue, occupying, criminal entity who is waging war and conflict all over, doing what they've done in Gaza, detonating pages which is unalive civilians and little girls, targeting embassies of foreign nations like what happened in Damascus, assassinating the spokesman of H group in Iran. What are you going to do with a rogue nation like that? This is all happening under the nose of Saudi, of Egypt, of Turkey, of Jordan, and of the wider nations like Pakistan, the UAE, Morocco, Algeria. A continuation of our regimes would mean a continuation of the crimes being committed. And an end to our treacherous regimes would mean an end to the crime being committed.